my number 9 edge rusher in the 2021 NFL draft, and it's UAB's Jordan Smith. This guy is fun to watch. I think there's a lot of untapped potential. He's a big guy, as you can see, at 6'6", 255. And I'm intrigued by Jordan Smith. He's the kind of guy that if you thought you were going to lose Montez Sweat, he'd be the kind of guy you'd want to get in his place. Here's the only problem with that. And we'll talk about that a little bit later on as we flip his card over and take a look. Is he's not really comfortable in a 3-point stance. So, but look, Chase Young is more comfortable rushing out of a 2-point stance than he is a 3-point stance. Jack Del Rio has said, I don't love that. I would like Chase to get down in a 3-point stance, but if that's what he's comfortable doing, that's good for now, but he's going to need to get more adjusted to having his hand in the dirt. That said, his strengths, size and length. Look, this guy is long, and he's 6'6", and he's nearly 260. There's a lot to like here. And you look at his frame, he's another one of these guys, doesn't look a pound over 245. So I question this 255 listing. He could definitely put on some more weight. I think he could get to 260, 265 if he's legitimately 255. If he was playing at 245, which it looks like he was right around 245 if you ask me, maybe 250, he can get to 260. He can get to 265, I think, and not lose any of his athleticism. I think his frame can carry more weight and still be a dynamic football player. Athleticism and quickness. He is a guy that you look at, and at times in 2019, I didn't necessarily see the athleticism. I saw the quickness. In short areas, he was quick. He could knife into the backfield and be problematic. But I didn't necessarily see a guy that was quick twitched. And I don't think he's a quick twitch guy, but I didn't see any quick twitch fibers in 2019. Then you get to 2020, and he looked a lot more dynamic as a mover in space. And he looked like a guy that had some explosion and some ability to be quick twitched. So I think there's more athleticism than meets the eye with Jordan Smith. I think there's some untapped athleticism there, if that makes sense. Stacks and sheds well. I think he does that better than most of the guys I've watched in this process to this point. I mean, his ability to disengage, this is the thing. He understands that he's got long arms and he knows how to use them. I put in my notes, he acknowledges that he has long arms, that he's got a reach advantage over most guys. And so he actually uses it well. So he keeps offensive linemen and tight ends at bay. And so it's not hard for him to disengage when the running back comes and get into the tackle or knife into the backfield. I think he does a really good job at stacking and shedding and keeping offensive linemen and tight ends off his body. He's disruptive at the line of scrimmage. He's a very disruptive guy at the line of scrimmage in terms of knifing into the backfield, discarding offensive linemen and getting to the ball carrier, getting in and getting pressure on the quarterback. I watched him in 2019 versus Tennessee, and he had at least 6 quarterback pressures, 5 quarterback hits, and like 2 sacks in that game. And I just said, man, this guy is disruptive. He had like 2 or 3 tackles for loss in that game. It's just disruptive. I'm watching him again in 2020 against Rice, and it's the same thing, and he looks even more explosive against Rice than he did against Tennessee. So he's disruptive around the line of scrimmage. He's got really good hand usage, and I love his rush tempo. He varies his tempo as to how he rushes. So he may lull you to sleep on this rush, and it's a hesitation, it's a hezzy, and then he goes inside. All right, then he comes like a speeding bullet off the line of scrimmage, and it's a speed rush. And he's been lulling you to sleep the whole game. He varies his rushes in terms of his tempo. You don't see a lot of guys doing that because you got to change it up. It's really mental warfare when you're going up against a tackle. It's mental gymnastics. You got to try to outduel that guy in front of you. And part of that is changing tempos, changing speeds. He does that really well for a college guy. You don't see it very often. He's got a robust rush tool belt. So right now, this guy comes equipped with the ability to do all of these things at an average or above average level. Spin move, speed rush, dip and rip, crossover. You're going 4 deep into the bag there. All right. And notice there was no STP. If he ever realizes that his length doesn't just have to aid him in the run game, it could aid him in the pass game as a rusher. Oh, this guy, he didn't have a latch and snatch. He didn't take the long arm of the law. When you got long arms, take one arm and pole vault the hell out of a guy. I call it the long arm of the law. Most people in the sport call it a pole vault, where you take one arm and you just stick it in the chest of a tackle and rough his ass up. He didn't have any of that right now. So again, he still is developing. He's still raw in that matter, but he'll get better. But the fact that he comes in with a spin, and it's a very fluid, smooth spin. He comes with a speed rush, and I didn't see the speed rush in 2019. The speed rush was more so, hey, I'm going to beat you with hand usage, slap your hands down, and beat you around the corner. In 2020, this was a full, pure, unadulterated speed rush. Like a legitimate, oh shit, you got some giddy up. So he comes with a speed rush, a dip and rip to turn the corner. And I love guys that can bend at the corner. At 6'6", if you can bend, man, you're lethal. You're lethal. And then he's got a really nice crossover. I saw that in 2019. So even when the speed wasn't apparent, the crossover was always there. He's got a really good secondary rush. If the speed rush doesn't work initially, he's got a nice little spin back inside. He's relentless with his pass rush. I like that. Good secondary rush from Jordan Smith. He's got a nice sack radius. People call it tackle radius. I think it's more of a sack radius for Jordan Smith because I don't see him making a lot of good tackles because of his length. I did in 2019, not so much in 2020, but I think you see the sack radius when it comes to his, I think you see the length when it comes to his sacks, where he's getting pushed around the pocket and he knocks the ball out of the quarterback's hand as he's going to throw it. He uses that length to reach out, go gadget arms, boom, ball's out on the ground. Or quarterback's trying to get away and he's able to stretch out an arm and get a piece and get him down on the ground or hold him up until the cavalry arrives. So he's got a really good sack radius on him, and he's got a high motor. This guy's motor is non-stop, almost to the point where I'm like, hey, dude, I'm going to need you to chill out, because there were a couple of times where the player's already on the ground and he's coming in with a late shoulder and helmet. I'm like, hey, you working on a 15-yard penalty, man. You OC with yours. You know, you need to chill. You got to chill, bro. But his motor is non-stop. Weaknesses. He's got a long, gangly frame. I mean, you can see it. It's not a well-developed frame at this point, but whatever works. You know, the guy that I'm comping him to has a long, gangly frame, and that works for him. So it may turn into a strength for him. But right now, I view it as, hey, he's got one of these stick figure frames, man. He's got a Gumby type frame. Pass rush plan needs work. I talked about him not using his length in the pass game, but using it as a run defender, but not using it in the pass game. He needs to use his length. He needs to utilize it. He needs to also come up with a plan, though, as a rusher. And I think if he can start to set tackles up, he'll be even more dangerous than he already is. More comfortable in a 2-point stance than he is a 3-point stance. That worries me because, to me, he's a much less dangerous player in a 2-point stance or in a 3-point stance than he is a 2-point stance. Like, there's a significant drop off to me when he's in a 3-point stance than he is in a 2-point stance. Like, he's dangerous out of a 2-point stance. Like, he's got rocket boosters at times. Go watch the end of the Rice game and watch him dominate. 2 straight plays, he gets sacks. in that game. And the last sack was the one that was his most impressive sack that I watched in all of the games that I watched him in. All of it is out of a 2-point stance. Like, he's comfortable standing up. He sticks his hand in the dirt, and all of a sudden, he's not as explosive. He's not as dynamic. He's not as sure of himself. He's not as aggressive. I think you probably have to stand this guy up. I don't think you can put his hand in the dirt. I really don't. And then lastly, he started out, I was wondering, how does a guy this talented end up at UAB? And look, shit happens. Guys slip through the cracks all the time. You get late bloomers. They don't get a bunch of recruitment offers. Guys have growth spurts in their senior year, and so they're under-recruited. It could be a number of things. But no, this guy was recruited by the Florida Gators. He showed up on their campus in Gainesville, and he got in trouble. There was a credit card scheme fraud situation that he got entangled in. He was one of 9 players suspended back in 2017. He decided to transfer to a JUCO, and then from there he transferred to UAB and finished up his career there. So teams are going to have to probe into that. Sounds like just a young guy made a dumb mistake when he was young. You get to college, you don't have any money, somebody comes to you with a scheme, it sounds good, and you get involved. I don't know the kid, so I can't vouch for his character, but if I had to guess, that's essentially what happened. Hopefully he learned from that experience, never to duplicate anything like that again, and you move on. Bottom line is, I got a day 2 grade on this guy. I could see somebody falling in love with the measurables and taking him late day 2 or second round, but I think he's more of a third round pick. But if you took him in the second round, I wouldn't have any issues with him, because I could see this guy developing into a double-digit sack getter at the next level if utilized correctly and if he fully develops into the player that I think he could become. And my comp for him is Leonard Floyd. I see a lot of the same similarities of Leonard Floyd coming into the league out of Georgia. He was more of a linebacker off the ball at Georgia, but people projected him to be an edge rusher in a 3-4 defensive scheme at the next level, which is what he ultimately was. It took him a while to get acclimated. He goes to L.A., has his first double-digit sack season of his career. It does help to play with Aaron Donald, but he was dominant. It took him a while to figure it out, but he's figured it out now. And so I see a lot of Leonard Floyd in Jordan Smith. Those two are really comparable in their size and their abilities, and I think that's who he best comps to moving forward. So Jordan Smith is my number 9 edge rusher in the 2021 NFL draft.
Louie